Sitting in standstill traffic on your way to work is incredibly boring and even quite frustrating. Why then does our playing sometimes feel the exact same way? Sometimes it feels like we're just stuck on autopilot, mindlessly playing the exact same patterns and shapes over and over and over again. I think we all spent good money on our guitars and we care about the instrument. So I think it's time that we find a new and exciting way to play it again, right? So here's where most of us get stuck. We put hours and hours learning different scale shapes, different chords, and the theory behind all of this stuff, only to really hit a brick wall. Suddenly, we're quite limited by the same shapes that we spent so long trying to master. It's like we're driving the exact same route every single day, and frankly, it's getting quite old. But what if someone showed you how to get more mileage out of those shapes? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do in today's videos. So let's make things more interesting and take the scenic route on the fretboard. So we're going to start by doing something quite simple. We all know how to play this minor pentatonic shape. This probably might be one of the very first things that you learn to play on the instrument. It's quite a nice sound, but it starts feeling stale when the only thing we really know how to do is play inside of this box shape and make music inside of this really limited pattern. So what are the greatest guitarists doing to keep things fresh and exciting, right? Here's the answer. They're not limited to playing this shape only in one spot. So let's see what happens when we take this exact same shape. Let's move it over here to the 9th fret. And again, it still kind of sounds the same, a bit stale when we play it over that C sharp minor position. But what if we change the root note? We change the bass note, right? We leave this open E string going, and suddenly it sounds quite nice. So what we have to do to break out of our old habits is to change the root note that we apply the exact same shape on. You can see visually and kind of conceptually that box, you can visualize it the exact same way. All you have to do to make things sound more interesting is change the root note that exact same shape lies on top of. So we have to understand how to shift shapes on the instrument around different notes. And when you understand how to do this, suddenly you've got a completely different sound without really having to practice anything new. Here's the best part about this shape-shifting idea. It doesn't just work for pentatonic shapes. You can apply this idea to any single shape that you learn on the fretboard. That could be chords, that could be different scale shapes like the major scale shape, or it could even be triads as well. It doesn't really matter what shape it is. Understanding how to reposition and reimagine them over different bass notes is going to allow you to create fresh, new, and inspiring sounds. It's kind of like discovering a hidden path on the fretboard that allows you to see things in an entirely new way. So what do we need to understand in order to unlock this freedom? Well, it all comes down to our understanding of the major scale. So to demonstrate this, let's look at this E major chord. We all know how to play this. This might be one of the very first chords that we've learned on the guitar. Now, the theory behind this E major chord, you might understand that the notes inside that make up the E major chord come from the E major scale. And you probably also understand that the notes inside the E major chord that are found inside the E major scale aren't the only notes. So there are 3 notes that make up this E major chord, right? And inside our scale, we've got 7 notes. So these are just 3 of the 7 available notes that we have to choose inside of our key signature. So we also know that inside this key signature, there's going to be more chords that we can play as well. So we can play like E, F sharp minor, like G sharp minor and stuff like that. We probably all know about the kind of theory behind diatonic chords in our key. Here's where things can start to get interesting, right? We know that these open strings are going to be found in the E major scale. And we know that the triads for the different chords in our key are also found inside that E major scale. What happens when we think about combining both of those together? So we can play this just regular E major with this triad over here on the A, D, and G strings. But what happens when we move to this second chord minor triad? So this is the 2 chord in our key, which is going to be F sharp minor, but also keep those open strings ringing. Suddenly we get this really, really nice sound. Again, all I'm doing is just changing this triad and putting a new context with the other notes around it. And again, we can do that for every single chord in our key. Let's try out the 3 chord. Sounds really nice. The 4 chord, again, it sounds really, really nice when we have these open strings ringing. And again, the reason I know that these open strings are going to work, they're part of that E major scale. It kind of sounds like an Allman Brothers song, right? And again, this isn't just limited to the key of E major. We know that an E major is going to be found in different keys as well. In every single key signature, there are 3 major chords. So that means in a different key signature, E major might be the 4 chord or the 5 chord. So let's look at E major in a different context. Let's imagine that E major is now the 5 chord. So E major is the 5 chord of A major. So we have A major is the 1 chord, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get to E major. And again, if we imagine the triads of the A major scale now, from this position, we can do the exact same thing. So we have our 5 chord here, 6 chord. Again, we're going to skip the 7. And we're going to go to the 1 chord. And then we have the 2 chord over here. Again, these are the exact same shapes as over here. But when you change the context in where you apply this inside your key signature, you get different sounds. And this is really, really interesting to me. So you get these really, really nice, lush sounding chords. And again, we already know how to do these shapes. I don't think anyone watching this is going to have to spend hours practicing to a metronome and going like these shapes are pretty simple. But understanding how to take simple things and apply them into a different context is going to make your playing sound a lot more advanced. Again, we're not only limited to like the E major chord with these open strings. Let's stick to the key of A major again. We also have this open A chord like this. And again, if you know your triads from here, diatonically, we have the 1 triad here, 2, like this over here, 3, 4. Let's keep the open strings. Sounds so much more interesting than just going. Again, put those open strings in there. It's going to sound so much more beautiful. And then you can start mixing and matching between like the different ones on the E string and the A string, right? So you can go like... and then go to this shape over here. And then suddenly these shapes that we're already comfortable with, we already know how to play them, they're working in new, different, inspiring ways on the instrument. And again, once you get good at understanding how all this stuff relates to the major scale, and starting from different points in the major scale, from different keys, you're going to unlock the ability to create these interesting modal sounds on the instrument as well, rather than just being stuck only playing the 1 chord of your key signature. So here's the key takeaway from today's video. The shapes that you already know how to play are far more versatile than you think. By understanding how they relate to the major scale and your chord progressions, you can break out of your old repetitive playing habits. You can unlock some new inspiring sounds by repositioning these shapes. And with just a tiny bit of music theory and a bit of creativity, you can create some advanced, beautiful sounding chord progressions. So the next time you feel like you're stuck in musical traffic, remember that you don't have to follow the exact same route every single time. You can take the scenic road, right? Experiment with your shapes and watch your playing come to life. It's going to be so much easier to create interesting sounding chords when you use those open strings from the diatonic chord that the key that you're playing in. You've got to understand how everything relates back to your major key. And when you can understand how to do this, the possibilities are endless. I'm always coming up with new inspiring ways to do things on the instrument because I'm thinking about how things relate to the major scale in which I'm playing inside of. So again, to break out of your old repetitive playing habits and get a fresh perspective on the instrument, just think about how what you're playing relates to the major key that you're playing inside of. And again, if you want to start leveling up your chords even more than this and start adding in some fills in there as well, I've also made a video on that exact same subject right over here. You can check that out too. And you can also access all the diagrams that I've shown today completely free and use them in your own time in my school community. It's a community for guitarists looking to progress on the instrument. It's completely free to join, and there is a link in the description to enter.